I guess the bigger question is what makes a crypto ecosystem, aka layer one? What does it make it sustainable and complete? And maybe you can also name some projects. Obviously, I guess Solana is one of your biggest convictions out there. But what do you think, which project or ecosystem is working best towards becoming a very sustainable and complete ecosystem in the long run?
Yeah. So I'm going to push back on part of the question, because I think the question implies some degrees of certainty that are fundamentally unknowable at the current moment in time, which is this notion of sustainability. I don't know what it means to have a sustainable blockchain. I don't think anything that currently exists is even remotely like if the definition of sustainable is you stop updating the code today and that piece of code must run in perpetuity, economically and everything else, whatever, right? And it must work. There's absolutely no chance that anything that exists today meets that definition. How do you reason about fees versus inflation and like all those games? Again, like there's been a lot of research done on this. I'm not particularly convinced that any of it is super useful, or I shouldn't say that useful. I don't think any of it you can make strong projections about some sort of binary statement of the nature of is this thing sustainable or not. So I don't like the premise of the question. I do think that what matters is path dependence, and that as long as an ecosystem is growing and continues to grow, then there is incentive for people to figure out how to make it sustainable, whatever the word sustainable ends up meaning in some long run period of time. So I'm going to push back on that as a somewhat semantic, but I think important designation. Basically, the only variable that matters is rate of growth of ecosystem. In kind of answering the question of like which blockchains win in the long run. And then the kind of corollary question from that is like, what are the things that prevent an ecosystem from growing? Basically, there's only one variable that matters there, which is like, loosely speaking, scalability. I realize there's different permutations of that and like cross-chain and one-chain and rollout. Like these are fuzzy and not strictly fungible concepts. But like, loosely speaking, the only variable that matters in the long run that will actually determine which blockchains win is basically a scalability. I don't think any other variable at all is even close in importance. And then the kind of next step in the logic from that is, well, what's the best way to maximize scalability in a historically path-dependent, useful way? And the answer to that is, in my opinion, is just scale the L1s as much as possible. It's not that complicated to scale an L1. There are some limits, obviously, like you have the speed of light, you have whatever heat dissipation in a CPU or in a GPU. Those are kind of the primary limits you're going to hit. But like you can get that pretty far. And then like if you separate compute and data later, like go for it. You can do that later. That's fine. But just like do that. And Solana and Aptos are the two, in our opinion, kind of strongest on-shot targets, on-shots at just maximizing L1 throughput. And then maybe there's side chains later, maybe there's L2s later. But like you don't need to deal with those options and the additional complexity that comes with those options until some later point in time.
So you're basically saying scalability is super important, maybe the most important point, and also the rate of growth of the network. I have a quick follow-up question to that before we get to Jack. I mean, we've seen it in crypto. Every cycle, there's a new big thing, the next big Ethereum killer. A couple of years ago, it has been EOS, and I remember the NEMs and NEOs, right? They were also promised to be super fast and like, you know, killing Ethereum overnight, but they never really gained that traction. They never really managed to take any market share.
Ow.
Why do you think? But we can get this in a second. Why do you think?
I can give
right.
Kyle's point here. The quality of developer that's come in, and you look at the folks who work on Solana and sort of their backgrounds in sort of traditional database design, as well as the folks from Facebook and Aptos and their backgrounds in traditional database design. And I think that the quality of folks coming into the ecosystem and the technical caliber of the teams working on these problems in terms of like individual L1 scalability is just orders of magnitude greater.
Yeah.